But yeah, definitely looking forward to our podcast therapy sessions again in 2023, because I think we'll be needing them given the form that we're in at the moment. Yeah,
we're going to need them more than ever, I think, just off the back of how we played against Forest, which we'll touch on in a minute. But before we do that, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, make sure you click that bell, that notification button. And also, if you hit the Linktree link in the description, it will take you to all our social accounts and our Apple podcast, Spotify podcast as well. It'll take you to all the previous episodes that we've done before. So, yeah, we didn't do end of year or end of the year 2022 review, probably because it hasn't really been a good year. Let's be honest. It hasn't been the best of years as a Chelsea fan, but let's progress it into the new year, which I thought was going to be a new, World Cup, brilliant World Cup we had. We haven't really spoke about that really as well, but we'll do that separately. Brilliant World Cup. I came into this sort of year thinking, positivity. Nottingham Forest was just, let's start with that game, because that was a game where we should have got 3 points. We looked like we were going to get 3 points in the first half and some parts of the second half, but we just collapsed and we just allowed Forest. We could have lost that game, let's be honest. We could have really walked away from there with 0 points. From my perspective, nothing really has changed in terms of tactically. I don't know what happens on the training ground, so obviously not privy to that, but what's your thoughts on the Forest game and the reflection of how we played prior to the World Cup to now? What do you think's changed, anything?
I think it's just a continuous kind of momentum of our form that we were showing before the World Cup. You look at even the second half of the Bournemouth game, as soon as Reece James went off injured, we didn't look good either. I think Bournemouth, if they had a bit more quality in their squad, they could have easily scored 1 or 2. But yeah, the Nottingham Forest game was poor. It was lethargic. It was lackluster. I don't think we showed enough desire to go and score that second goal. That first goal from Raheem Sterling, good finish. It was a good finish on the volley, but it's a lucky goal. Takes a big deflection, hits the crossbar, and then he just has to slot it in on the volley. But yeah, we just didn't show enough to get that second goal. And typical problems that we're showing throughout the season is we're not killing games off. We don't go in for that second goal. And like you said, I thought Forest could have gone and won the game. That second half was really poor. I feel like the same players that you always want to show a bit of consistency, the likes of Havertz, Mount, Pulisic, those players just didn't do enough for me on the day. And the substitutions, none of those substitutions had an impact. I think the only player that looked like maybe he wanted to get a ball into the box was Hakim Ziyech, and he put a brilliant cross in for Aubameyang, but Aubameyang again hasn't scored since October, couldn't finish it. And then Kovacic, Gallagher, they look poor. They just were in there to get their steps or their minutes in. They didn't look like they had enough in them. But yeah, no, really poor performance. And it's that you're playing a team that's in the bottom 3 of the Premier League and you're Chelsea Football Club. You'd expect us to win it. You'd really expect us to win it, but we didn't, and that's what really worries me. We're 10th now in the league. And if we want to kind of gain a bit of form and momentum to get top 40, the type of games we need to be winning. But the fact we're not winning them and dropping points is really worrying in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think, that second half was poor. I think we had one shot. We had 60, maybe 63% possession of the ball. But Forest were all over us. I think they didn't have much of the ball. They took their chances. They looked like they were going to get a second goal as well. The midfield for us is, we're going to get to transfers later on, but that midfield is crying out for new, fresh blood. No criticism of Jorginho. I thought, he looked... it's almost like a domino effect. I think because the midfield's so poor, it's now making our centre-backs look poor. And arguably, Thiago Silva is the best player in Chelsea Football Club right now at 38 years of age, which shouldn't be the thing. Thiago Silva should not be playing week in, week out at Chelsea Football Club at 38 years of age. He should be a player that we bring on cup games, big games like City tonight. He should be that player that we bring into the team, but he's been wheeled out every single game. He's the player that we rely on at nearly 40 years of age. When you think about the money we've spent, the players that we currently have, the players that we've had previously, looking to a man who's closer to retirement than his peak years, to carry us over the line, to get us a point out of a game against Forest. I think that, to me, shows us a lot more about the previous recruitment, the recruitment that's happening at the moment, the players' desire to win games. There's so much that's at fault Aspilicueta, I mean, I don't want to single him out because the Forest game was poor for a number of players, but for him, if that game didn't tell people that he's not, I would say fit enough, but he's not at the level, the quality, I suppose, anymore. He screams out, Ivanovic to me at the moment, where he was a brilliant right back for us for many years. But if you watch the decline of Ivanovic, I remember a couple of seasons ago watching him at West Brom. He lasted 10 minutes. He's one of those players now. I think we've seen the best out of Aspilicueta. If he starts tonight, which again we'll get onto later, but if he starts tonight, it could be 4, 5, 6. That's just being kind to Aspilicueta, but it's worrying. You look at the strikers as well. Let's quickly talk about, obviously Raheem Sterling took his goal really well, but Aubameyang not really doing anything. Havertz not really doing anything. Like you said, Zek was probably the only player who came on and the sub made sense. I didn't understand. We've got all this youth on the bench, these talented players that we brought in. You look at Amari Hutchinson, Chukwuemeka, who I think came on at some point, but very late into the game. Why not bring them in? Why not throw them into the game second half earlier on? Give them something to these experienced senior players to think about in the game. I just don't get it. I mean, what's your thoughts? Would you have probably brought on, Hutchinson or Gallagher a bit earlier? Would you have given them a bit more time?
Well, I do think, given the kind of vast amount of injuries that we have at the moment, we do lack a bit of depth on that bench. And the substitutions, I guess, were those experienced players that Potter could turn to, the likes of Ziyech, Kovacic, even Gallagher. Now I kind of class him as an experienced player when he's alongside the bench, alongside the likes of Hall, Chukwuemeka, and I think it was a player called Humphreys, I believe, the other day. Yeah. But no, I agree with you. The attacking players were poor. Kovacic, when he came on, he had a brilliant World Cup, but he was poor. I don't know if he's not really match fit yet, but he misplaced, I think, 2 passes in a row, and that's when I just knew it wasn't going to be our day, to snatch the 3 points. That being said, I do think he'll start today, and hopefully, if he gets more minutes under his belt, then he should be match fit and show build that form that he showed during the World Cup with Croatia. But no, going back to what you said about Silva as well. He was at 38. He was the player that played the most minutes for us in 2022, which for me is worrying. It's really worrying. You've got players like Mount, you've got players like Kovacic, Jorginho, even your goalkeepers. When you've got an outfield player playing more minutes than your goalkeepers, and the outfield player's 38, something's just not right, is it? So I think completely echo everything you said about the recruitment, the strategy, the kind of the players that we're linked to, trying to bring in. Is it making sense for us? And we're going to move on to that when we talk about transfers in a bit. But I don't know. For me, I thought maybe that first half of the Bournemouth game, I thought we were going in the right direction. But second half and the 90 minutes of the Forest game were just shades of the form we were showing throughout November and the start of the season again.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we've spoken about the transfer strategy and players that we do need to sign, players that we have signed. I want to start off with, obviously, the big news that came out last night around Enzo Fernandez. Deal looks like it's off. It looks like whatever the negotiations have been over the last couple of days have come to a stalemate. Benfica want X amount. Chelsea are willing to pay X amount. It's laughable, to be fair, because I think it's a player that we need, in my opinion. It's a player that we're crying out for. We're crying out for someone who can be a bit more creative in that midfield. We've done all the hard work. The player wants to leave the club. He's come out. He said, I don't want to play for Benfica anymore. I'm happy. Chelsea's the only club I want to go to. Benfica are willing to sell. The manager came out at the weekend and said, it looks like he might have played his last game for Benfica. He didn't train earlier on in the week. He was allowed to go to Argentina, I think, for New Year's Eve, celebrate there. Everything's lined up to sign what is a quality player at the age that he is. I mean, is this signs of, earlier on when Bowley took over and we was going for Rafinha, we was going for this player, we was going for that player, and it just seems like we're going down the same road we did in the summer, where we're throwing things at the wall, expecting it to stick, and it's not working. But what's your thoughts on Enzo Fernandez, first of all? Is he a player that we need? Do we need to go back in and just activate that release clause now?
I think even before our kind of looking for that number 9 who can get us goals, we need to focus on our midfield, because Jorginho is out of contract in the summer. Kante is injury prone. Kovacic is only getting older. Mount, Gallagher, knows Loftus-Cheek aren't really exactly central midfielders. Sure, the money that Benfica are asking, I think it's just under 120 million euros. It's a lot of money. And you do ask yourself the question, is it worth it? But like you said, we've been crying out for a player like that in that position, who's young, who's just come out of the back of an amazing World Cup. I do kind of think it is a lot of money. It is a lot of money for a player that's been good for maybe a year and a half now. And I don't really understand the people that say, oh, but it's not our money, why should we care? But you look now at financial fair play and the long-term impact it's going to have on clubs in the future, especially that we're not really looking like we're going to sell any players for a lot of money. I think it may come to bite us in the future. But if we can kind of try to find a way to even the money and sell some dead wood or some players to make that money back, then I'm all for it. I think like you mentioned, he wants to move. The manager has allowed the player to talk to Chelsea or his agent, I think who's Jorge Mendes, to talk to Chelsea as well. But I think now it's the only kind of roadblock is Rui Costa, the Benfica president, who's really holding back for that 120 million his release clause. I still don't think it's completely finished. I think this is a transfer kind of saga that might go to deadline day. And I think it might get to the point where the player maybe refuses to train. But I think Benfica really are holding back for a lot of money because they're top of the league at the moment. They only lost their first game of the season against Braga last week, and they want to win their first Portuguese title since 2020. So I think that's why. And Fernandes is a big piece of that, their team and their squad. But I'd be really happy to see him. It's exactly what we need for the next 6 months of the season and the future as well. But I do worry that it is a lot of money, especially with the long-term impact it might have on the club going forward.
Yeah, I understand that. I think I suppose I'm looking at it from the other perspective of what do we need right now to at least, we'll talk about City in a minute, but if we lose tonight, we're almost in the bottom half of the table. We can practically write off top four this season. I'm not saying Fernandes comes in and changes that overnight or even this season, but it might give us a bit more going forward as well. I've just put this tweet up and I'll be honest, I haven't checked how reliable the source is. So, but this is a massive if this is true that we are trying to offer Hakim Ziyech or Fofana or Santos, two players that potentially do need to go on loan somewhere anyway, because I don't think Santos has got a work permit at the moment. He might end up going back to Vasco da Gama anyway. But if this is the case that we're trying to do these sort of Klarna payments, which is what I call them, offering 90, but we'll add someone else in. Yeah, financial fair play is a massive thing, and I do get that. But I think this is a player that realistically, we've just signed a Ivory Coast striker that hopefully will come good at some point next season. To me, this is the massive piece of the puzzle. This is something that we need to address this season. My worry now is that Liverpool, Jude Bellingham looks almost slightly more likely to join Real Madrid than Liverpool at the moment, based on what the season people are saying out there at the moment. So if he joins Real Madrid, you can guarantee Liverpool will do everything in their power to try and get Fernandes, and another team that is crying out for midfielders. And I think we've done all the hard work. And if we allow a player of this caliber, in my opinion, I get what you mean. He's only had a very short period of quality football in him. But if we can get someone like this over the line early doors, and I think as well, I read that he's available for a lot less in the summer. So do you hang on and wait? But then again, we saw what happened with Haaland. City snapped him up straight away. So I just think it's such a strange tactic from the board. We can't blame previous manager who potentially was in charge of signings, as everyone kept screaming, telling me a couple of months ago that Tuchel was responsible for all the failings in the signings. This is now on the owners, and this is what I said when Thomas Tuchel was at the picture. Moving forward, Todd Bowley and everyone who sits underneath him is now responsible for these transfers that come through. If we fail, it's on him. It's not on. It can't be on Graham Potter, because Graham Potter's job is to get the players to play, train them tactically, etc., etc. This has to be done, in my opinion. We have to get this deal done. Obviously, not with the likes of Fofana and Santos. I think we should just have to activate the release clause. I just don't see it myself, but yeah, it's a sad one. If we don't get that, it's a sad. Especially if he goes to Liverpool, I mean, the likelihood is he goes to a club in England, I think, and it would be Liverpool. I don't see City anymore wanting him or trying to go over him. The only team that was really linked with him was Liverpool, within England. It'd be a shame to let him go there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a lot of money, but I don't expect him to drastically change things overnight. But at his age and given the quality he's shown in a short period of time, I think it will be an investment, a long-term investment. And I think there's also talks of us paying that lot of money in different kind of installments. But yeah, I think it'll be a big blow if we kind of let this one kind of go out of our hands and he joins a rival team.
I agree. Let's move on to some others, because I've just mentioned obviously Fofana and Santos. We have signed. Well, have we signed him now? I think we signed from Monaco. My mind's gone blank.
Benoit Badiachil, I think that's his name.
Badiachil, yes. 21-year-old. I think he's left-footed centre back. French international. Give me thoughts on that, because Koulibaly, who hasn't really performed as we thought he would do. Fofana, I think is again, could play left side. Cucurella, who's played left side as well. Are we overstacked in centre backs at the moment, or is this the case of Thiago Silva departing the club at the end of the season and bringing in as much quality to make sure that we got enough cover there for next season?
I think we do have a lot of options as centre backs. Chalobah is another option, but I think it also is the quality of those centre backs. I mean, don't get me wrong, Silva is world class, but like we spoke about so many times on this podcast, he's 38, and I think we're asking for a lot, even if he renews his contract for another year. Whereas I think Koulibaly, Cucurella haven't really shown the form that we were expecting them to show when joining Chelsea. Chalobah's good, but he's still quite raw and young. And then Fofana's been injured. I do like the profile of Benoit Badiachil. Two appearances for the French national team as well at 21 years old. I was reading a Eurosport article from a French journalist called Jean-Baptiste Duluc, and he kind of gave an assessment and analysis of Badiachil, because I don't know too much about him. And he said that he's not the final product. He's a bit more raw than Chouameni was when he left Monaco, but he's a really exciting talent. There's still kind of weaknesses to his game. Apparently he leaves a lot of kind of unprotected space behind him, allowing players to make those runs. But there's definitely room for improvement. But yeah, he's a good player. I think we do need a centre back, because as good on paper as the Silva Koulibaly partnership is, it hasn't really worked out as we were hoping to, and it seems now that we've reverted back to a back four, so we're going to need two very solid centre backs as well. And I don't know if this one will be for a player that's kind of ready for the season or more of a long-term investment, but yeah, you look at Fofana, you look at another name on that article, Saliba, who's come from the Ligue 1, has performed really well. There's definitely some talent there, so I think this could be an exciting move, but I don't expect him to kind of just slot in and be kind of the centre-back we've been looking for maybe since the partner of Thiago Silva, or to replace John Terry, or even the Cahill or Ivanovic we had in the day. I don't expect that from day one, but nevertheless, I think it's an exciting kind of player to be linked to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, go back to the age. I think I said he's 21. So, like it says in the article there, you don't expect him to be the polished version of, say, a Kurt Zuma or someone of that level, but there's room for improvement, as you mentioned as well. And I think even in there, in the article, it says, you'll need time to develop, you'll need time to adjust to the Premier League as well. So there's a lot, but it's impressive that we're signing players of that level. The age is right as well. I just scrolled down before and I noticed here, look at the ages of the players that we've signed on the top so far. All of them, I was going to say bar Wesley Fofana, are under the age of 20. So it tells you the vision and the I suppose the project, the process. Even in Andre Santos as well, 18. Shows you the vision of what Todd Bowley is trying to build at Chelsea. But I do think that is a massive gamble as well, because you've also got to nurture these players. You've got to get them to the level that you expect them to be at. But you still need a bit of that experience, I think. like you just mentioned around Thiago Silva. You need someone like, Mason now, who's, you can't really class him as a youngster anymore. I know he's still relatively young in terms of his footballing life, but he's not young. He's been at that top level enough now to be able to put his arm around some of these youngsters and say, look, this is what we need. And even Conor Gallagher, maybe mention him, or Raheem Sterling. You need these players to step up now and bring this second bunch of youngsters through, who eventually will be hopefully first team players Chelsea. But just looking at that list there, obviously Reece James, we're going to get onto injuries shortly, but you look at that right back situation now. Surely this transfer window, we need to look at that. We need to address that area of the pitch, in my opinion. But there isn't many players that have, that scream out to me in terms of right backs that we can go for.
No, I'd have to agree. It doesn't even look like we're linked to many right backs, and I can't really think of a youngster in our academy that can maybe fill in to play second choice to Reece James. Because I'm going to be honest, as much as I like Aspie and as good as a servant he's been to us during his 10 years at Chelsea or so, he's not got that level anymore to play second choice to Reece James, unfortunately. Especially when he's playing, right back, and we expect him to, be able to track back defensively, but also offer, a bit of a threat going forward up the pitch. But I think one of the other big problems we saw against Forest was Cucurella and Azpilicueta were just too scared to really, push up the pitch and offer any kind of support to the attacking players. And that's something that Reece James and maybe even Ben Chilwell do so brilliantly. And as a result, it just ends up being Aspie to Silva to Koulibaly, Jorginho back to Silva, and just passing around those kind of midfielders and defensive players and just keeping the ball and not doing much with it. So yeah, I think right back's a big kind of area to address as well. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen in this transfer window.
I know we've been linked with, and I forget his name, obviously, as you mentioned at the very start, we've drank a lot of beer and alcohol over the Christmas break. But there's a right back from Celtic that I think we've been looking
at. Croatian one, I think.
Yeah. I think, yeah. So, and I think he's on the the market for relatively cheap. I think under 10 mil. So I think maybe as a stopgap, that's probably the option. I want to talk about Reece James though, because I feel like obviously the injury he suffered against Bournemouth was, I don't know whether it was, I expected it. Part of me did, because if you watch the way Reece James plays, sometimes he does leave himself open to sustain these type of injuries, the way he lunges in for the tackles or he lunges in for the ball. And I think there was a period in the first half where he did that. He kind of went in with his knee, he leaves his knee there. It just allows for these kind of things to happen. And my worry now for Reece James is that he's never going to recover to the level of expectations that we know and want from Reece James. I don't think we're going to see that anymore. I think he's probably, even the likes of Van Dijk, you're looking at Van Dijk now, he's not the player he was before that massive injury at Everton. Chilwell, another one. These players are they're working day in, day out, training, whatever, playing matches, and then the rehabilitation doesn't seem to be enough. The period of rehabilitation doesn't seem to be long enough for the players that I'm talking about here, for Chelsea players. But do you think Reece James is ever going to hit that height? Is he hit a ceiling now because of the injuries that he's sustained over the last 2 seasons, or is there still room for him to progress, in your opinion?
I see what you're saying, and I really hope you're wrong, because we want to see Reece James. We really want to see Reece James finish his career at Chelsea and drop those 10 out of 10 performances like he was doing when he was fit. But his injury record isn't promising. It really isn't promising. His first game back from supposedly being fit, having trained in Abu Dhabi with the rest of the team, he played that behind closed doors friendly against Brentford. And then he just goes and gets injured, and it's the same recurring injury that he's been, suffering with for the last year or so. And I really hope that he kind of pulls through, and I feel like he's a very mentally resilient player as well. But I just feel like question marks need to be asked about. I've spoke to you on this on WhatsApp, but our medical team. I feel like you look at the amount of players that are just going down like flies with injuries. Even Fofana, first game back, the same game against Brentford, and he goes off injured. Chilwell only came back against Watford for the last game of last season and got injured against Dinamo Zagreb in November. Yeah. We're talking about maybe 2 months back from an injury, or first game back sometimes, and getting injured. I just don't know if our medical team are assessing these injuries properly and rushing players back, too soon. But I think something needs to be done to kind of, assess this problem, because we can't keep going on like this, especially when it's, I hate to say it, but players that we depend on so much, Kante, Chilwell, and Reece James, we look lost without those three players. We really do, especially, like I mentioned, the wing-back areas. Aspi and Cucurella just aren't, for me, they're not Chilwell and Reece James. Let's play like that. And I think it really could, and it has damaged our top four chances. And I think that's really where we've seen a kind of a gap in the quality in the lineups and the quality of performances we played.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, when you posted this, I I did just laugh to myself, because it's, I mean, 42 games and they've only played together once. That's a worrying. It is. I mean, I'm reading the tweet out if anyone's not watching on the live stream, but Reece James and Ben Chilwell have only started together once in 42 games for Chelsea. I mean, that sums up everything around our injury crisis that we've been having for the last 2 seasons. My worry for Reece James is I just think the role that he plays, in terms of that wing back position or even right back position, the expectation of him to be getting up and down that wing. So as well, the muscle that he carries. I mean, he's quite a big muscular guy. He carries a lot of weight on him. That will play a part. In terms of rehabilitation. Is he too heavy in terms of muscle? Is he carrying too much of that? Possibly. You could say yes.
He's got that SCN build in a way, hasn't he?
Yeah. And you look what happened to Michael Essien eventually. The same thing. So it just worries me that we won't see him for a while at the level that we need him to, and I think that's the worry. You see the difference when he's not playing. You just see a massive difference in terms of how we get that ball into the box. As we've already mentioned, Azpilicueta, a brilliant servant, but he's finished. He's not the player that we need to be playing in that role at all against any club, whether it's Forest or City. It doesn't matter. He's just not at the level, and it's a shame for him, because I think he had the opportunity to potentially leave in the summer, maybe go to Barca or back to Spain somewhere. Whatever happened, he decided to stay, or the club requested that he stayed for another season. But you don't want him to go out with the legacy that he's got at Chelsea, to go out as a Branislav Ivanovic, with no disrespect to him, but you want him to go out on the top. And I think that was last season. Club World Cup, won it all. That was his time, I think, to leave. But in terms of the injuries, I think, the medical staff have got question marks, and it's not just the new medical staff, because I think the previous head physio was removed from his role when Todd Bowley came in. So this is an ongoing thing, from season to season. Look at Kante, look at Kovac, who played, injured in the FA Cup final last season, heavily strapped up, bruised ankles, bruised thigh. I'd arguably say Thiago Silva must be receiving some form of injections. He has to be receiving something. His body must be falling to bits, really, but he's just plowing through these games, at 38 years of age. So, look at Mendy, who's injured now as well. There's so many injuries that are just cropping up all over the field. It has to be down to the medical staff. It has to be. You can't have any injuries, and if it's one or two, okay. If it was just Reece James, you could say maybe it's a Reece James issue. He's got something hereditary wrong with him. It's just a muscular thing. He's never going to recover from it. But if you're talking about 5 or 6 players, and the same players, that's got to be a medical sort of medical staff issue, that you're rushing these players back because don't have anyone to cover for them. They're falling apart after 2 games or 30 minutes or whatever the case was. Just to sidetrack slightly, you put a tweet out before the Bournemouth game about Reece James. I think it was from the In-Betweeners. And it actually happened. It almost happened to the minute of when it was going to happen, which I get why people say, why did you play? Well, it is. And, a lot of people said, why did we play Reece James? But if he's been given a green tick by the medical staff wrongfully, but they've given him a green tick that he's fit to play the game, Potter's in his right mind to start him, because you need someone in that position. You can't play Azpilicueta. So it's a double-edged sword for the manager. He's been told by the medical staff they're fit to play. He plays them. They get injured. He's out for a month now, which is a massive. I mean, you look at the games we've got in the next month. It's scary. But how do how do we change this? I mean, is it a case of removing the medical staff, back reviewing things, just allowing them the recovery time that they need? What needs to change?
Bring back Eva Canero. That's what I'm saying.
I heard well, I don't know if you, there was a tweet over the Christmas period. Where was she? It was like in jest, but there was definitely a
I
tweet
think it
where
was
it was kind of,
sarcastic. I think it was
okay,
sarcastic. It
well,
must be. I don't know.
things haven't
But
been, now you've mentioned it, things haven't been the same since she left, to be fair.
yeah, you look back at those earlier seasons, and in the last 5 or 6 years, I think we went through the whole 2016-17 season with one injury. All those kind of big cup runs we did and league-winning titles, we really stayed clear of injuries. But it's, like you said, it's only been the last maybe 3 to 4 years where we've really suffered with injuries, and players are kept out for more than a month or two. Which, yeah, and then you put that fixture list up there: City back to back, Fulham away, which won't be easy. These are the type of games where you need a fully fit squad, and you need your best players to be fit. The likes of Reece James, the likes of Kante, the likes of Ben Chilwell, but they're not, and that's what's worrying. And I doubt we will 100% drop points in all those games, or the vast majority of them, because of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, just looking at the January period, I mean, this isn't even going into February, but you look at even the way that Palace played yesterday. I know that they lost to Tottenham, but they still were in the game up until that first goal went in. I thought they had a better first half than Spurs, to be fair. But you look at the way Palace are playing, they're a mixed bag, very much like we are at the moment. So you don't know what Chelsea's going to turn up that day or what Palace turn up. Fulham, Mitrovic seems to be the one with the scoring boots at the moment for Fulham. We already know about City. I mean, back to back, I don't preview the game tonight shortly, but you know what you expect from City. And I mean, that game on the 21st, it's as mad as it sounds.
It's a must win.
Yeah, it is. All of them, all these games here, all the three. And again, sorry if you on the audio version, Fulham on the 12th, Palace on the 15th of January, and Liverpool on the 21st of January. Early kickoff against Liverpool on the 21st. They're all must-win games. If we lose tonight, we lose against Fulham, we might draw against Palace, and we lose to Liverpool. We're talking bottom half of the table. Worrying times. I mean, out of those games, I mean, which ones realistically do you think we should be winning? I mean, maybe Fulham, Palace, or is the expectation we should be winning every game?
I mean, the expectation of Chelsea is every game we play, we should be in it to win it. But Fulham, no disrespect to Fulham and Palace, but on paper, those are squad teams that we should be beating. Liverpool, given their form, we should be in for a chance. But I mean, football is very unpredictable. But if we can't beat Nottingham Forest, who are in the bottom three, then what says we're going to be beating Fulham, who are having a fantastic season? Palace, like you said, who stayed in the game until very late on against Tottenham, and then kind of unfortunately for them, they crumbled. And then Liverpool at Anfield, which is never an easy game. And they still have the quality in their squad. No, sure, they lost to Brentford. They draw a lot of points this season. They're only slightly above us in the table, but they still have a lot of quality in their squad. And they've got a fantastic manager who knows how to turn things around. So I think they're definitely going to be up for that game. But like you said, they're all must wins in our eyes. And if we want to still keep our top four chances alive, then those are games that we need to be winning and picking up points. Otherwise, it's curtains for us this season.
Yeah, I mean, I've resigned to the fact that we're not getting top four. Even more so if we lose tonight, which if we're going on how we've been playing recently, is very likely that we will lose. I just don't see us getting top four. I don't see us getting out of that January with 6 points, and I think that's what we need really to even keep the top four dream alive. I think obviously there's a lot of football to be played still. We're only in January, but look at those fixtures in January. You look at, we haven't even factored in the Champions League when that comes back, when we play Dortmund and just things like that. So, and if we pick up any more injuries as well. So over to tonight, we've spoken about City a couple of times on here already, but they're not the City that would worry me if they weren't passing the ball to Haaland every time. And not to say that Haaland doesn't worry me, but that's their new thing, is get the ball, pass it to Haaland scores. So if we keep Haaland quiet, it's a big if,
yeah.
Massive if we keep him quiet, which is possible. You can do it. We've got Silva at the back. And we'll get onto predicted lineups hopefully shortly. But it seems to be the City way. They're not the City that was steamrolling teams, 5-6-0. I know they did at the start of the season, but you look at Everton, Everton who were down and out, still are, in the bottom three now, managed to get a point against Man City, who no one would have expected that. So they are beatable. They are. Take the game to City, and something will happen. If you sit back and allow them to play the game and dictate the ball and retain the ball and pass it around, it's going to be a long evening. And my worry is that, which is what they sort of did at the Carabao Cup game. They didn't really dictate the game, but when they went forward with the ball, they were clinical, and we allowed Alvarez so much space on the ball. It was unbelievable. What's your thoughts going into the game tonight? Big game. We said it already. It's a must-win. What's your thoughts?
I completely agree with you. It's City, as good as City are, they are beatable. We saw it with Brentford before the World Cup. Liverpool did it at Anfield with that 1-0 win. They are beatable, but the difference between us and City is that City are clinical. They take their chances. They've got brilliant players to come off the bench. We probably won't see Mahrez or Grealish or in the starting lineup tomorrow, but those are players that will come off the bench tonight, and make an impact. And like you said, if their strategy all kind of seems to just be get the ball to Haaland, cross it into the box, he'll find a way to score. But if Silva man marks him really well and gets him out of the game, then there's a chance. But I'm still really not optimistic. I still think almost the dropping points against Everton for City would have been almost like a wake-up call for them, and they're going to come back tonight with a vengeance. And if we play like we did against Forest, then I don't even think we'll score a single goal. Forget trying to talk about getting a draw or a win. But yeah, I think it completely depends what Chelsea we see turn up. And if it's the same Chelsea that we saw, take the game to AC Milan home and away, the same Chelsea that played City and beat them 5 times in the league in the last 4 or 5 years, then that's a possibility. And we saw that Guardiola, like we always say here, he complicates things at times, and it's the type of game that he might overthink. A few injuries to talk about with Man City. I think Ruben Dias is out with an injury. Emerick Laporte is a doubtful tonight as well. But that being said, they can still bring in the likes of John Stones, Nathan Ake, Akanji, who are all fantastic centre-backs. So I don't think that's too much of a big kind of something to report about. But yeah, I'm not optimistic, but football's unpredictable. And especially, with Chelsea, it would be a very Chelsea thing to do to get 3 points. But no, I think I'll give my prediction very quickly. I think it'll be 3-1 Man City.
3-1. Do you know what? Yeah. I think that's generous. I think I was going to go higher. I think if we don't keep Haaland quiet, and I know he's not the all and end of it, but he is the engine for the team at the moment. I think it doesn't matter who plays on those flanks. If it's Foden or Mahrez or whoever, it doesn't matter. They've got Kevin De Bruyne in that team who can pick a pass from anywhere on the pitch. And what worries me about our defense, which I'm going to quickly put up the lineup that I went with earlier. Let me know if you disagree, but I went up with this lineup earlier. My worry is the right back position. I haven't gone with Azpilicueta. I've gone with Kepa in goal, which is given. Obviously, Mendy being injured. I've gone for, I was going to say Nathaniel Chalobah, Trevor Chalobah, at right back, which is question mark already. I know. Koulibaly and Silva as the centre backs, Cucurella as left back, 2 midfielders, Zakaria and Kovacic. Another question mark, Amari Hutchinson in front of them, and the 3 of Sterling on the left, Hakim Ziyech on the right, and Kai Havertz, who really did not impress me against Forest. He looks like a feather. He looks like he needs, I don't know, he's just getting knocked around the pitch. But it's a toss-up between him and Havertz. You put Havertz there because he got a goal against Bournemouth. He's had a very good World Cup, or a relatively good World Cup. But what's your thoughts on that and change in terms of players and etc.?
I do like the thinking. I do like not playing Azpilicueta and switching things up with Chalobah. I think, as much as I'd love to see Hutchinson, I don't think that will be in Potter's thinking, unfortunately. I think it's a big kind of game to bring him in for his Chelsea debut. And I do agree with you, Havertz needs to step up. I think it will be, I do think Mount's will play this game. I think he's that player that always features in these big games. And I think
Do you think
it'll
that's
be.
right though? Sorry to cut you.
It's not
Do you
right.
think
No,
it's right?
I completely disagree. No, it's not right. I think players should be dropped when their form hasn't been on par with their usual level, and almost to show that you can be dropped. You're not a guaranteed starter. But I think Potter won't take that risk, unfortunately. And we know that when Mount does step up, he's a brilliant footballer, like we saw with his goal against Bournemouth. That being said, I do think he's having a below average season this year. It's so hard to predict the lineup, but knowing Potter, I think he'll go with a similar one that played against Forest, which isn't right. And I think instead of Zakaria, it will be Jorginho. I think it'll be Jorginho, Kovacic. He'll focus on experience. But much as I do agree, I want to see Chalobah right back. I want something different to Azpilicueta, because I think with Azpilicueta right back, we know what to expect. We know he's going to be chasing the likes of Foden,
It's a long night.
Mahrez. It's going to be a long night, yeah. And then there's a possibility of you play a back three, and then should the wing backs get caught out, you've got extra cover with that third centre back. That's another option possibly. But I don't think, like you said, we have the quality in the wing backs anymore. Cucurella hasn't really
got any wing backs.
No,
we haven't got any.
No.
We've got. I mean, I think Pulisic has played right back or right wing back. I think Sterling played there at one point. I wasn't a fan of it. I mean, I'd love to see Amari Hutchinson. I know it's a massive gamble to put him in there, but I think what have you got to lose at this point in terms of, Mason Mount for me does need maybe it's the fact he's played a lot of football. Started the season, he's played a lot of football. He went to the World Cup. I think he played pretty much every World Cup game, if I'm not mistaken, I think. So is it just a case he needs a rest, a break? Not sure, but I would change. Hakim Ziyech for me has to be in the team.
Agree, yeah.
Sterling in there because he knows City inside out. He's played with them. Obviously, this is I think the upper hand for us really is at Stamford Bridge, which you would expect the fans hopefully to be vocal. I know you're going tonight. Be vocal. But I think we have to get 3 points here. So I think Hakim Ziyech and Sterling on those wing on the outside, Havertz in the middle. I mean, I would play Amari Hutchinson. I just think give him something. Give these players that expect to be in the team something to think about. Give them a rest, but also something to think about as well. I kind of agree with you around Jorginho, but
he's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of football as well.
He has. And if we're taking the game to City, he doesn't strike me as someone who thinks forward. He's very arguably, he has to be a defensive-minded player, which worries me. And that then can expose the likes of Koulibaly, who I'm not very confident about going into a game where you've got Haaland, you've got Foden, you might have Mahrez, you can have Kevin De Bruyne working the strings in the midfield. I can see him either picking up a card or even worse, getting sent off or giving away a penalty, because he seems very on edge when he plays sometimes, and you're not sure what to expect from him. So yeah, I'm gonna go 5-1. Not to Chelsea, by the way. Sorry if you thought that was for Chelsea. No, this is for Manchester City to score 5 goals against us. I can see it being a game where they're annoyed that they dropped points against Everton. They want to try and close that gap on Arsenal. And we just don't look like a team at the moment. We really don't. Defensively, midfield, we're not scoring. So it could be a cricket score. If Azpilicueta starts as well, it's going to be a cricket score, in my opinion. So I'm going to go 5-1. I hate to do it. I hate to be the one who starts in bad fashion and negativity, but things need to change. And if we can do that tonight, then great. But if we don't, wrap in. It's going to be a long season, I think. I've shocked Theo into silence with my 5-1.
No, it's going to be a long season, but it's going to be a long 90 minutes tonight as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if City just bang them in, especially a player like Haaland gets 2 or 3. Not looking forward to it, but I guess with that going into the games now, just expecting the worst, hoping for the best is the mentality to have, given our form. But I really hope we can turn things around eventually. I think you do have to try to stay positive. But yeah, let's just hope for the best.
We haven't mentioned Potter. We won't do it on this episode. We'll do it on the next one. Because there's questions I want to ask about Graham Potter and how he's done so far and what we expect him to do for the second half of the season. But we have run out of time for this one, so we'll do it on the next one. Maybe we'll talk about how we beat Man City 6-0 on the next one. Don't know. Let's hope. But for those who are listening on the audio version, make sure you head over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel, and also click the Linktree link in the description. It will take you to all the podcast episodes previously. Our social accounts as well are all on there, so make sure you do that straight away. Theo, as always, thank you very much for joining me. Enjoy the game tonight. I say that word loosely, enjoy the game tonight. And yeah, let's hope we can get a positive result. Thank you everyone for watching, who's been following the accounts as well. We appreciate it all, so make sure you continue to do that. This has been episode 76 of From the Shed End. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay safe, and thank you very much for listening.